my endeavors, I came across this Craftsman push mower. It's got the front drive and single speed. The first thing that I look at when I get something like this, it doesn't have compression. To find out if it has compression, you can do one of three things. One, just pull the pull starter while the spark plug is in. Pull the pull starter, you could feel the kickback every time the piston comes up and the compression hits. And the other way would be to, if you have somebody else with you, you can take the spark plug out and you can put your finger over the hole and have somebody pull that pull start, and you'll feel the compression on your finger. And the third way would be to use a compression tester. So compression gauge, what it would do is you would actually take the spark plug out, you would screw in one of these, depending on which one fit your spark plug. You would pop it on here and you would pull start it, and when you pull start it, it would load this gauge with how much pressure is in that cylinder. You'd want to look at your motor, and you could do a lot of Google searches and things like that to find out what the compression should be on the engine that you're working on, just so you can get a good idea of how your motor is looking compared to what it was brand new, how much compression it had. I already pulled it and I know that it does have compression. I'm pulling it now, and I struggle to pull it every time the piston gets to top dead center. So I know that there's pretty decent compression. I did some research on this motor, and they say that it needs at least 60 psi in order to run, and optimal would be up to anywhere up to around 120 psi. This is a compression tester that I showed you in the box. All you do is you screw it into the cylinder here where the spark plug would go. Plug in the gauge, and then you pull it, and as you pull it, you'll notice that the compression gets higher and higher. Okay, so what we're seeing here is that we're right around 70 pounds of pressure. So that's enough to run this thing. It requires 60 to 120 pounds of pressure. And then we release the pressure, and then we can unhook and unscrew. The second thing that I'll look at is the oil. I want to see that it has oil in it first of all. And there's a little bit of coloration to it, but it's not burnt oil. The next thing that I want to look at, being that I know it has compression, I want to see, does it have spark? What I'll do is I'll take the spark plug off. First I take the spark plug wire off, and then I'll find the right socket that will pull the spark plug out. Now what I'm going to do is, like I said to you before, is look for spark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this against metal. What you want to do is you want to see the spark jump. You want to pull it, and you'll see if it actually sparks off. So now we know that the thing has spark, we know it has compression. So here's our spark plug that we just saw that had spark. Now what we're looking for, first of all, right here we have where the spark comes out of, and it arcs to this thing here. This we want to see that it's square, not pointed. If it's pointed, the spark plug's old and been worn out. Also our gap, we check on the gap too. So if the gap is too far, the spark can be weak. If it's too close, the spark can be weak. To get optimal performance, you want it to be at the gap that it says it should be for that spark plug. Research on that would get you the information that you need. So we just noticed that we had spark. What we're going to do now is clean the spark plug to make sure that we have the best performance spark plug that we can get. To use a carb cleaner and the wire brush. So I'll spray a little carb cleaner on it. I get my wire brush out, and I'll just hit this for a second, clean it up, make sure there's no residue, corrosion. It shines up pretty nice. Carb cleaner is something that really breaks down a lot of gum and build up corrosion. Okay, so now we have a nice shiny spark plug that we know has good arc. We got to check that it's getting fuel. It's important to know that whatever you're working on is getting fuel. It's still not firing. We didn't hear any puttering. So there's some different options on what's causing that to happen. Okay, now this is your air filter. As you can tell, this person hasn't messed with their air filter enough. It's as dirty as it can get. So what I'll do is I'll use my air compressor and I'll blow this out for now. It obviously could use a good replacement, but for my purposes, I just want to see if this thing will run. So I'll blow this out. So what I'm going to do now, I have some starter fluid. And I'm going to spray it into the intake here for the air, and it will mix the carburetor with the fuel and the air to make our combustion. So give it a little spark, starter fluid, see if it gets any fire this time. Okay, so we had a fire. What that tells us is there's either a fuel problem, or if you heard how it like puttered out like that, it could be a timing issue. What I just did again was I sprayed a little bit more in there to try and start it again. If it starts again, and then I know it's a fuel issue because it's not getting fuel enough to run it. But with the starter fluid, it's actually firing. So what I know now is that the timing is off. The fuel kind of has a weird smell to me, so I checked it out and poured it out into a coffee can here, and you could see in there at the bottom it's separating, which means that there's water in this fuel from sitting outside or something of that nature. You can see it moving around at the bottom of the can here because it does separate. So I drained all the fuel out, and I'm going to put new fuel in, and then we'll give it a shot and see what happens. If someone's using a mower and they hit something, there's a thing called a keyway. The keyway keeps everything in time. Now when you hit something with your mower, your blade gets caught on either a stump or a brick or a rock or whatever it might be. It stops the engine from turning, and what could happen is your engine would blow up. And a keyway is a softer metal, and what it does is it shears off before the motor blows up. So this would be on the shaft of the mower. Okay, and when the mower blade hits a rock or something, this would shear off and it would take the motor out of time, but the motor wouldn't be blown up. So I'm pretty sure that's what's happening here, because when we put our starter fluid in there, it started up, but it stalled right out. And then when I put more starter fluid in there, it didn't even start at all. So when I see that it started, but then it doesn't start, it's telling me it's off time. What we'll check is the blade. I'm gonna flip this up. We'll take a look and see if this blade has been hit with anything. Yeah, look. Okay, so now what we're looking at is this blade right here. You can see that the blade is straight all the way up until you get to the end here where they hit something. And it is obviously bent out. There should be a little bit of an arch to it like that, but you see that the blade here doesn't go past the deck. Here, the blade goes past the deck about 1 inch, meaning they hit something pretty good with that at a high RPM. That's telling me that they could have sheared that keyway. What we're going to do is we're going to take off this housing, this plastic housing. That's going to get us to the flywheel, which is where we pull start it. Okay, and once we take that off, we should see if there's a keyway that's stripped, and if that keyway is stripped, that means that it's off time. So that's what we're going to do now. What I'm going to do is start by getting my Phillips head, take off this plastic housing so I can get to the actual motor itself. And take these screws out holding this plastic housing. Okay. Always keep your screws organized. I like to use coffee cans, and I just keep everything stored in there. Alright, so we're taking the gas tank off now. So what we do is find all the screws. There's 3, 1, 2, 3 here. So I'm taking those off now. And then there's one down below that holds this tank on too. So you'll want to find all your screws. Okay, so now I have 4 screws out. Take this off. Now, it's also held on by the fuel line. Take the oil dipstick off, and then we're going to get this cover off. So first is the oil dipstick. It's just one bolt, and we don't have to pull it out of the engine. It's just the O-ring that holds that in. So I just want to make sure it's unhooked from this, like that. And I want to leave it in because I don't want to have oil drip all over the place. I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible. Now I'm going to take all the bolts off that hold this cover on. We're getting down to the bare bones of the motor. Okay, so now we have that all apart. Alright, so here we got that cover off now. We're down to the flywheel, and right here we have our shaft. Now this shaft here is actually connected to where the blade is, and if you look at it right here, you can see that that's where the keyway would go down on the flywheel, and that's what keeps the thing in time. So what we're going to do is take this nut off. Okay, and now once this nut comes loose, we could take it all the way off and get down to the bare bones of this motor to where this keyway is going to be. Here's our keyway hole on our shaft. Here's our keyway hole on our flywheel. As you can tell, when they hit something with this mower, they sheared that keyway, and the flywheel is actually moved over from where it should be. So it should be right here to keep it in time, but it's over here. So what I have to do is I have to get this flywheel off. Once I get the flywheel off, then I'll be able to put a new keyway in there, and that'll get this motor back in time. What we have here is the flywheel. We know that the keyway is stripped because we just looked at it, and what we have to do is pull this flywheel off. The way that we take it off is we use a puller. So we have here a puller, and the puller will sit down just like this, and we'll put bolts through it, and the bolts will go into these holes and thread into those holes, and then what you do is you screw this in, which brings this pulley puller out, and it pulls that flywheel off. So what they have here is holes that are unthreaded. So it says to remove, use wheel puller holes. These are the holes that they're pointing to. They're unthreaded, like I said, so what you use is thread tap. What I have here is a 1/4 inch thread tap, which just barely fits in the tip, and then that means that it's going to be the right size to tap in there, and we'll spin it around, and what it does is it cuts threads into the metal, so then we can put our bolt in, and once we put our bolt in, then we can actually pull the flywheel off. So we have here our 1/4 inch tap. We're going to oil the hole. Now that we've oiled the hole, we're going to put our tap in the hole, and we want to just work it in. And if it gets tough to turn, we'll just back it off. Give it another shot of the oil. Let it get back to work. Okay, now I'm bottomed out, so I don't want to go any further or I'll strip it out. So now I'm going to back it off, and then I'll use my air gun to clean it out. So we have clean threads in there for our bolts, for our pulley puller. Now just to check that we have the threads in there right, I have a 1/4 inch bolt here with the same thread count, and I can screw that right in by hand on both sides. So what I'll do is I'll get bolts that are long enough to reach through to those holes with this pulley puller set on, and they'll reach through down, and then once they're threaded in fully, then I can start cranking this to pull the pulley off. Okay, so what I have here is a puller. I found 1/4 inch with the right thread count, and I got it long enough to reach to the threads. So all I do is I make sure I have washers that'll hold that. What I'll do is I'll thread these into the holes. And then I'm going to bring our puller up, make sure it's centered on our shaft. Alright, so I have my 7/8 socket that fits on our puller, and what I'm going to do is tighten that down, and as I tighten that down, it'll pull this pulley puller up, which will pull this flywheel up. Yep, okay, so there it goes. So now what we did was we got our flywheel off. As you can tell, it's a little startling when it finally happens. But here we go. Take a look at this. This is our keyway. This is where the keyway goes into the shaft here. And what you can see is that keyway sheared completely off. Here's the rest of it. And the rest of it was in here. As you can tell, it did tear up the flywheel a little bit in here, if you could see. Where the keyway sheared, it did tear up right here, but that'll be okay once we get a new keyway in. We'll clean this all up, get this out of here, put a new keyway in, and press that back in. Essentially cut this key, the new key, to the right length so that it'll fit in here without sticking out too far. Obviously this is way too long, this key now, so I'm going to cut that down. So what we're going to do to cut that down is we're going to come over here to the vise. I'm just going to put this into the vise, tighten it up. So I have some chalk here. I'm just going to put it up there. Have it. Okay, so I got my mark. Now what I'm going to do is get my sawzall. Make sure you have a metal blade. Metal blade meaning it's a smaller tooth. I'm going to use this as my new key. So after I cut the key, you see that there's excess metal. I don't want that sitting in there just because I like a clean job. So what I'm going to do is my bench grinder to clean this off. I'm just going to start it up. Okay, I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to clean this up. When using a bench grinder, you don't want to push too hard. It'll grab that key and it'll take it right out of your hands and throw it at your chest. So you just want to just graze it. I mean, you just want to clean it up as good as possible. Clean. So I'm going to use that. So my new key is in. Key in on in the slot. I made sure that it was held on tight in the keyway. So then I put the flywheel on top. I just tapped it down a little bit just to make sure it's tight and it was seated right. Make sure it's your flywheel and your shaft are moving together. Take this piece here, put it back on, then I'll take my nut, put that back on. If you have the blade on, you can use the blade to hold the shaft, but I'm going to use the screwdriver on these fins. As you see, I'm trying to go into a fin that's very supported because you don't want to shear these off either. Okay, so now I'm getting some tension, and what I'm going to do is just tighten it down, and you can see that right now, if you look here, how far it needs to go, you can see where it's rubbed before, and I need to make sure it's pressed down as far as it should be. So I'm going to continue that point. So now I'm getting to the point where I'm ready. I'm just going to give it a little bit of tug there. Okay. Now we're all set to start putting back together, reassemble. What I'll do first is bring our cover back. Cover goes on. Now what you got to make sure is that your pull start is matched up when you get it back together. So when I get it back down, I want to make sure that our pull start is actually grabbing onto the motor and spinning the flywheel, which it is right now. So now I can start putting my bolts back in. Okay, so I'm putting my dipstick back on. That's first. Now I'm going to take the gas tank, put that back on, and I'll bolt that all up. And once that's bolted up, then we can give this thing a shot and see what happens. Now that should be in time, so it should fire up for us. Alright, my gas tank's back on, so now I'm putting on my cover again. Just make sure it's lined up.
How's it lining up?
And it's not getting fuel. We know that it's getting spark, we know it has compression, we know it's on time. It's not getting fuel, so next process is carburetor. So the air intake, this was sitting here, it was 3 bolts, 1, 2, and 3. Took those 3 bolts off. The carburetor is held on by 2 bolts. There was one right there, and there was one, you can see it right there, I already have them loose. The third thing would be this here. This is your throttle, okay? And that was in that hole right there, if you could see that. Yeah, so that was in that hole right there, so I took that out. So now I have my carburetor off. I'm going to check the carburetor for corrosion inside, lack of gas flow. Any corrosion inside could cause the float to stick, and I'll show you what the float is and what that does too. So here we have our carburetor, and this here is our bowl, and the bowl has a float in it, and this is where the fuel sits. And when the fuel is sitting in here, the jets pull the fuel up into the carburetor and shoot it into the cylinder. So what we have to do is pull this apart and see exactly why fuel is not going in. Most likely there's corrosion in there. So we take the bowl off. And we can see that there's corrosion inside there. And here's our float. And the float should move freely. As you can see right now, it's tough for me to push all the way up. The corrosion is in there, and I can get it past, but it takes some maneuvering. So it's not moving freely, and that's due to all this corrosion that you can see here. This is all just corrosion in here. You can see it coming off there. So what I'll do is I'll use carb cleaner with a little can here. I'll clean all the parts, take the float off. Alright, so I pulled the pin out. That was hard to pull because of the corrosion. As you can see, there's corrosion on the float. This is the needle that lets fuel come into the bowl, and that's all corroded. You can see all the corrosion in the carburetor itself. This is the screw that went into the bottom of the bowl here. Goes in there like that, and as the fuel is sitting inside the bowl, it pulls the fuel up through. Now this is totally corroded through. There's no hole. When I put light through it, I don't see any light. You should see light right there. You can see it coming through sideways, but coming through the top it doesn't come through. So I'm gonna have to clean this with the carb cleaner. What I'll do is I'll put the parts in this top, and then I'll spray my carb cleaner in there. So here we have the carburetor. I've cleaned everything up using the carb cleaner, toothbrush, and some screwdrivers and tools, just trying to clean out anything that had gum in it. I also used the air compressor, blow all the jets out after using the carb cleaner. You can see that there's no more white corrosion on anything. When I look into these jets, I could see right through. There's holes in them. See if I can get this. See that hole in there? You can see through that, see the light, and then you can also see light right through there. So that's very important to see. Got the corrosion off of this here plug, which allows the fuel in from the float. So now I'm going to put everything back together. First I'm going to put this into the float, and this goes into that sleeve. You see how that holds together there. Now that has to you have to make sure it goes into that hole. After it goes in, you put the pin in to hold the float. So you see that goes through there. Okay, so now my float is free floating just as it should. I can put my bowl back on, and this is the jet we saw earlier. And that goes on just like that. So now I'll tighten that on. Snug it. I'll reinstall this carburetor and we'll give it a shot and see if it fires up. The carburetor is back in place. I just have to bolt it up. Alright, so the carburetor is bolted back in place. I could start putting our airbox parts back on. Like I said before, that was 3 bolts. It bolts that back up, and then I'll hook up the fuel line. Okay, so you see where it cracked it. I gotta get a new one of these from the store, and then I'll put it all together and see how. The housing for the blade was shattered, so I just went to the shop, picked up some parts, and got a new spark plug. Here's the old housing for the blade adapter, and here's the new one. So as you see, the old one sheared the key right out of there. The new one has the key built in. So what I'm going to do is just install the blade. Once I install the blade, we'll be ready to run. I'm going to have to reshape the blade because if you look at it, that side right there is bent. So what I'll do is I'll put my gloves on in a minute, and I'll have to put that blade in the vise and I'll bend it. I got my blade here, and my blade is bent. As you can see, it's supposed to have some bend to it, like that, but this side is way more. So what I'm going to have to do is attempt to unbend it, which if I put it in the vise on the bend, I can straighten that out by crunching it there. And steel always comes back after you bend it, so you want to go a little further than you want. Let's see. Still could use a little bit more, but we definitely got some bend out of it. So I'm going to see if I can get any more. Alright, I'm going to let that sit there for a minute. Alright, let's see if this thing helps. Oh yeah, that's way better. Okay, so that's the one side. I'm going to flip it around, see the other side. They're pretty equal now, and when I put it on I'll really know, but it could probably use a new blade, but for now, for our purposes of troubleshooting this mower, I just want to see it run and cut. Alright, so I got my bench grinder set up here. Turn it on. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blade, make sure you have your gloves on, and what I'm going to do is I want to try and sharpen it up, and what I want to do is not let it get bound up in there. Whenever you use the bench grinder, you want to use the shelf that they have set up for you, and you're just going to come in. If you take a look at this blade, you see that I'm hitting the edge of the blade, not making it too sharp of an angle. I want to make a long angle so it can cut smoothly.
This blade is in bad shape, man. We'll get it cleaned up though.
Alright, so you take a look at it now. We got a pretty nice sharp edge on her. So now we can do the other side, which isn't as bad as that side was, but let's get it done. You can see, man, this blade is really beat up. I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now with this. So I'm going to shut off my bench grinder and this here blade. Alright, because this is a front steering mower or a front drive mower, it has a housing for the belt. As you can see, the belt is here and the housing covers over the belt there. So I'm going to put that housing on. After I put the housing in, then I could put the adapter, and I want to line up the keyway with the new key. Okay, so now that's in. Now I take my blade and I can take the bolt and put it on. Just make sure your blade is facing the right way so that the sharpened blade is down. And as I tighten it up, I want to make sure that my blade is sitting in the what I'm talking about. What's that piece called? I forget. You want to make sure your blade is sitting here in the holes there, so it's in its attachment, and it's attached nicely. And then you just hold the blade. Make sure you get that bolt as tight as you can. Okay, so now we're all set up with our blade again. I could see that my blade is not sitting below the housing, the deck. So I did bend it back enough to get it out of the way where it won't be cutting too low, as you can see there. Before it was sitting out from the deck, just about that far. So it was about an inch out bent, so I bent it back. So now I'm going to do the throttle cable, and then we'll see if this baby will cut. Okay, so we're going to put the mower back down. Inside the handle where you push the throttle forward and back. There we go. You can see where it broke. Alright, so this is our new throttle cable because our other one I did show that was broke. I took it out of the housing and took it to the shop, but they don't sell just the cable anymore. They sell the whole mechanism. So what I need to do is just remount the new one where the other one was mounted before. Make sure I get everything in order that was there, like this. So I'm going to put everything back to where it goes. And then I'm going to run my throttle cable. I got to keep it out of the way from the pull start. So I want to make sure that I run it right so it's not affecting anything else. So I'm going to run it underneath here. And then I'll put a wire tie on the handle here, but that's going to go right up to this throttle cable. I mean, the carburetor, just like so. So now I'm all set. I'm just going to wire tie this up out of the way, but we can see that if it's functioning properly, we can see it. So what I have to do is, at full throttle, I want to push my cable, my throttle all the way up, as if it were in full throttle mode, and then I'm going to take the screw out and I'm going to put this mount just like so, and that holds the cable in place. Okay, so that holds the throttle in place, the cable. Now when I pull back and push forward, you can see that it's functioning properly with the new throttle cable. Alright, so we have our mower all together. We're going to prime it. It's got good gas in it now, and we'll see if she'll start. that's how you troubleshoot a mower.